much more about, how do I create a file in GAIN collaboration? What is the working method, the procedure? How are font fields filled in automatically? And so on. For this, I'll switch to ZW3D. And in ZW3D I have already created a very simple component, that is, in the normal way people know it. Created a sketch, extruded, made a sketch, drilled holes in it, and so on. This part, I'm going to go to the component attributes, has no properties other than the file name at the moment. The user attributes are not filled at this point. What I have already done is that I have selected a material, in this case a stainless steel. I have calculated the weight and the other information. They are already attached to the component now. Now the question is, how do I get this component into my GAIN collaboration? That means, I have to switch to the GAIN collaboration ribbon bar. I am logged in as Tonak and in ZW3D. And in the other applications to which we have interfaces, we always include such a GAIN collaboration ribbon in the interface. At this point I can now say, I want to connect my component. Connect means that the file is taken. So let's say connect and that action transfers me to the GAIN collaboration. What does the system do at this point? It generates a file name, that happens here, or it is generated automatically. And the other fields, I've explained those before as well. I would like this to be a manufacturing component. For that matter, I'm going to enter the part number here. And the display name, I explained that last time as well, is now automatically populated or generated from these three fields. On the Article tab, however, I now also find, for example, the information about the material I used in ZW3D and the weight. The whole thing happens via the so-called properties comparison. That is to say, the system looks at which attributes I want to take on from the 3D component into my GAIN collaboration, and I can configure that accordingly. I will go into this in more detail in Part 3. And this information is now attached to the data set, so to speak. I'll now save the whole thing. So, the file is now saved and that means it is brought into the GAIN collaboration and is now connected to the collaboration. That means, if I now click on the properties, you can see that I created this today, the date is for today, the properties and the information that I just gave to the component are now attached here. And so the information hangs on the component. But what has also happened is that the file name has been renamed. I just said, we automatically generate a file name and this file name is now of course also used for the ZW3D component. My display name can be found here. That means, if I now want to have information about my component at a very quick glance, then I see, okay, this is the file name, which usually means nothing to me because it is generated automatically, but it is a manufacturing component with my freely assigned part number. And this designation, that is to say, this information is attached directly to the component, thus giving me immediate overview. In the process of connecting, other things have happened. Namely, I now have user attributes that are filled accordingly. That also happens through matching of properties. That is, the information from my database is now also written directly to the component I see here, my GAIN collaboration name 1, name 2, who created this whole thing? My model number, my prefixes, and so on. I'll just say OK, just to have the overview, to see what's happening at that point. So, my component is connected to the GAIN. Now I want to derive a drawing. I'm going to do that the same way I know from ZW3D. I have prepared drawings here, frames or title blocks. I'll take A3 and I can create my drawing now. I'll take the front view, accordingly. I might want to show this in section. Then I can have my section view of this component and so on. I don't need to continue with dimensioning for the moment. Of course, it works the same way. And I can say, for that matter, I want to have my dimensions for this view. I do the same for the vertical view. Then I have my dimensions here, and everything that I want to have quickly, for a quick overview, is now dimensioned. Maybe I want to have the total length again.
Okay, should be enough for us.
This is more about, how do I manage my data? What we're seeing here is that, foremost, information is, of course, being taken from the component at this point. But my drawing's not yet connected to the gain. So that means I go here, switch back to the Gain Collaboration ribbon tab, and say Connect on the drawing as well. It's a different file format. I say Connect, yes, I want to save this, and then a window pops up again. Now here I can basically say in the background. In the background means, I now transfer all the information from the component into my drawing data mask. I'll take that away in the background, and then you can see that. So, here are prefix 1, prefix 2, mounting plate. The info is all in here in the record now. It's a drawing. I say save. As I said, usually once you've set it up appropriately, you say in the background, then you don't need to see the mask at all. The fields, as we have just seen, are filled in. I will perhaps show you briefly that I am now basically taking on all the attributes from my component. I have just said that the component now gets all these fields filled, or properties filled, and so we can also use this for our title block.
Okay.
So, the component is connected to the gain, and the drawing is connected to the collaboration.
Now I might be done with my actual work and say okay, I want to check in the drawing.
I had explained check-in, check-out last time. When a file is checked out, then I have exclusive editing rights. That means I have write access to the drawing. Colleagues can look at the files, but they can't work on them. When I am finished with my work, I say check-in.
Check-in means that the files are now saved on my computer, then moved to the archive, to the server, and you can see them here. At this point my ZW3D is now empty.
So, the files are saved, closed, moved to the archive and are available there. I can say created today. Then I see, here are these two files in there. That means, my component that we just created and the drawing that we just created are showing up here now, with all the information that we just passed along. And I also explained that briefly last time. I'll go into it again, that is, when I'm standing here on the drawing now, that is my drawing, I can also see by the symbols, if I pay close attention to it. This is my drawing, and the drawing has references because it accesses this and that component. And if I now click on the component, then I have the use here. The component is used in this drawing. So, these connections between components, drawings, assemblies and so on are automatically visible or viewable. They're automatically set, and don't have to worry about that. The whole thing becomes important when I go back later and say, I have a component that is installed in 5 assemblies. And then, when I use it, I can always see that the component is installed in such and such and such and such an assembly. So, I can decide when I need to replace a component, when I have a recall, when I want to make a change, and then I have an overview. Where has the component been used in the first place?
Okay, but my part and my drawings still have the status in development at the moment.
So, they are still in progress, not yet finished. But now when I'm done with it, then I can go over and say, I'm now changing the status of this file. I've selected the drawing and I can do the whole thing for the component here at this point. I say continue, and then we see there, it automatically sets these green check marks. That means my drawing and my component are now released. And in the background we now see that the ZW3D is flickering. Now let's go back for a moment. The flickering is because I have a so-called job server running. Let me just move the window in so you can see. A job was accepted, a job was finished, another job was accepted, and another job was finished. What does that mean? I have released the drawing and the component from my collaboration. Released means, for example, the inspector and the inspection date are entered in the title block. Since I had not opened my ZW3D or the file was not open because I am here in the game collaboration and have started the release from there, the file is opened in the background by a job server. The properties of this drawing or this data set are transferred to the title block. And at this point, of course, the title block has to be filled in again. This is done by the job server. It usually runs on a separate computer and simply does this in the background. As a user, I have nothing more to do, I don't have to worry about it. Type field always has the current status and, what also happens at this point, I had already said this repeatedly, will create a neutral format. In my case, it is a PDF file and this PDF file has now indicated here who checked and approved the drawing and when the whole thing happened. That also includes the creation of the PDF files. I have already explained this in the first video. I have nothing to do with it. This happens automatically, and I always have security, it is always up to date. That means that if I make a change here, if I make a release, if I create something, then the PDF file is always updated in the background. That's a huge advantage when colleagues access these files, for example, colleagues from sales, colleagues from maintenance. They want to access this data and can actually be sure when I make changes or anything. The file is up to date. So I don't have to worry about it. It happens automatically. I'm going to go ahead and make a change. That means that this data set is now ready for me. If I wanted to open it, that is perhaps still important, then I have no more write rights. The file is released, I am no longer allowed to change it, but I want to create a revision. Of course, I'm allowed to do that. Then I want to do that for the drawing and for the component. I'll say revision.
The index is counted up for me with an A, B, C, D, etc. I don't have to worry about it.
There are also customers that have 010203 or 123, you can configure that the way the customer wants it. So, when I say create revision, now in the background the file is copied, so both the drawing and the component. Let me first close the record here. And we see the old version status. Here is the original state of the file. This is just going to be done again, as I said, my job server is doing its job. As I said, normally you have a job server installed on a separate computer. In that way, you won't have a window popping up every now and then. But my old drawing, this one here, is in revision now. What about the PDF file? If I go to it, there is a watermark on it. That means, there is a thick print on it saying in revision. The colleague from sales, the colleague from maintenance, I just mentioned this, now gets information that if he pulls out the PDF file, doesn't pay close attention to it or wants to look at it, there's a stamp on it. He should not work with it because this file is being revised. Here we have the new state of the file. I'll just add one more reason for change. 2mm chamfer. This is what I always do quite well. Like this. And so, I now open the file. This means I have to go into my component and open it. That will then be loaded for me. And if we look at that, the properties, this has the A on it. My changes and so forth show up with this. And if I now open the drawing from here, the title block is also filled in at this point. The info is there. If I say I'm going to make a change, then of course I have to do that. I can simply bring this 2mm bevel here. Super example, I better break off again. Then we'll do it from the outside. That's actually what I had in mind originally. Exactly. To have it chamfered on the outside here. Yes. The bevel is on. Basically, I can now look around. Maybe the chamfer has changed the weight. Not really. Surface or so, yes, but of course, I can say update data when saving, but the weight has not been calculated. So now if I switch back to my drawing, the changes to it, as I said, that font field is filled in, actually everything is the way I want it. Maybe I'll add the master to it.
Okay.
And now let me check my drawing back in. The drawing is saved, the part is saved. The data is moved back to the archive I just told you. So. And back in the collaboration I now say refresh. From this drawing, from index state A, there is no PDF file yet. This PDF file will only be generated, you can see it here, when I release this drawing. That's what we're doing now. That is, I say I want to release the drawing and the component. We have just seen how this works. The green check mark appears on it. And my old file, the two up here, they're invalid now. Invalid, I've told you this before, means that no one is allowed to work with it. And I'm waiting for my job server right now. It's making these PDF files with the stamps on them, just like I said. That means I have released the new drawing, the font field is filled in again, and so on. And for the existing drawing, I say update. That's what I wanted to explain. The PDF file has the stamp reading invalid. We fetch it from this record, it's stamped on here, and it says invalid. And this file, this is the new version, we now have, you can see it here, with the phase on it. So, I kind of get my data from ZW3D into Gain collaboration. That's how I can make changes, that's how my revisions are managed, that's how my PDF files are automatically created.